A hurricane strikes at the New England coast with a force greater than that of any atomic bomb. In minutes, houses, shops, and schools may be leveled, boats smashed or sunk. In the Midwest, a flood puts whole states out of commission, swamps factories, ruins farmland, cuts off vital food supplies. In time, of course, the nation rallies behind victims of such disasters, but in the first few hours or even days, the stricken area is usually on its own, forced to deal not just with the original punch, but also with the others that follow after it. Almost any catastrophe, explosion, earthquake, tornado, or even flood can cause raging fires. Disruption of communications hampers rescue and salvage efforts, leading to further complications. All of us can remember newsreel reports on events like these. Many of us have lived through them. Water, if not cut off entirely by breaks in the mains, is frequently contaminated. This in turn means that overtaxed medical facilities and personnel busy contending with injuries must also contend with disease. At just the time when they are needed most, they are placed in the position of having to carry on their work with gravely reduced efficiency. Handicapped, for example, by the fact that blocked streets force them to proceed at minimum speed. Thus can one complication often lead to another. But does all this mean there is nothing to be done? That we must resign ourselves to the worst that a disaster might bring? Not at all. A great deal can be and is being done to lessen the blow, and sometimes to eliminate it altogether.
Atop one rim of the Kanawha Valley of West Virginia at Charleston, two industrialists and a state police officer look down on one of the most important industrial complexes in America and on a continuing serious problem. Here along a 25-mile stretch of river, enclosed on both sides by mountains with only two main roads leading out of the area, is a heavy concentration of industrial installations, including, among others, plants that turn out 7% of America's vitally needed chemicals, as well as a number of petroleum refineries and storage areas. The men who direct these industries joined together back in 1952 to do something about the dangers created by the topography of the valley and the volatility of many of the materials produced here. They formed the Kanawha Valley Industrial Emergency Planning Council, whose purpose is to pool all community resources to prevent avoidable disasters and to contain them if they should occur. Local government agencies were only too happy to participate wholeheartedly. Now, with the setting off of simulated fire next to a tank car of liquid chlorine, a substance that under certain conditions can be extremely dangerous, the Emergency Planning Council stages for Industry on Parade the 9th in a series of dramatic exercises intended to test and develop the valley's ability to meet any crisis. Employees of companies, kept fully aware of the problems and the proper procedures, react like real pros. The first thing they do, under a carefully worked out procedure, is notify the state police, who then can take over the task of summoning whatever aid is needed from any of 14 towns in the 5 counties of the valley, or if necessary, from outside. All police and fire departments have welcomed and supported the Emergency Planning Council's activities, for it has made possible a coordination of effort and of facilities and equipment that many communities only talk about but never actually achieve. Now, they are likely to get the word in time to do something about it. As city and town fire departments move into high gear to combat potential disaster, the alarm goes out also to member companies of the Emergency Council, a number of which maintain extensive paraphernalia for combating situations like the one being simulated. This equipment is available when needed outside the plant gates. Meanwhile, the fire has not been permitted to rage along to the point where no one could control it. Courageous volunteers at the affected plant, trained for the job and equipped with gas masks and other protective gear, wade right into the billowing fumes to shut off valves and keep the danger from spreading. In the dense clouds of blinding smoke, these men, familiar as they are with the equipment, are best qualified to shut off the flow. And they don't perform this way only when the cameras are trained on them in a simulated emergency. They've proved the quality of their courage and training time and again in real emergencies. The overwhelming majority of employers here in the Valley, as elsewhere in the country, are doing their sincere best to work in harmony with their employees, preserving their dignity, treating them as human beings. Just how successful such efforts have been is clearly evident here in the response of these men to an emergency that threatens their jobs, their community, their company. With equipment at the various plants standardized, hoses, pumps, and other gear from neighboring firms can be put right to work without delay or confusion, although most plants are quite self-sufficient in handling all but the most serious emergencies. The first alarm we saw being put in brings doctors and ambulances too, just in case. To get emergency vehicles to the scene quickly, elaborate, well-rehearsed plans provide for the diverting of non-essential traffic off the main arteries. To assist in this task, plant guards from companies participating in the council are stationed at appointed intersections, helping regular police to redirect automobiles. With just two main roads running through the valley, traffic congestion used to be the big complicating factor during emergencies. Director of the council and other key personnel are passed through to handle their assignments at the scene, as of course are representatives of newspapers and radio and television stations, all of which have given the program their strong support. An on-the-scene press conference helps keep the public constantly informed, the best way of avoiding the added danger of panic. In-plant emergency procedures provide for the orderly evacuation of the staff of a threatened installation. Such drills are generally carried out with a minimum of smiles or laughter. All hands seem to realize the full significance of this deadly serious game of make-believe. The test is based on the assumption that there's trouble at one of the industrial plants in the valley, but of course the training and practice everyone gets would stand the area in just as good stead in the event of a natural catastrophe. Even the children and their teachers are rehearsed in what they must do should disaster strike. School children everywhere are accustomed to fire drills, but here in the valley, a drill takes them farther than just outside the school doors. They must be ready, if heaven forbid it should ever be necessary, to clear out of the valley itself, proceeding in file up into the mountains to safety. Because of the efforts of a group of hard-working industrial leaders, members of the Kanawha Valley Industrial Emergency Planning Council, the prospects that this trip will ever have to be made in earnest happily diminish with every passing month.
Preparation for disaster, while not always so well organized on an area-wide basis as in the Kanawha Valley, is an old story to American industry. Companies everywhere, as here at a Dayton, Ohio electric company, have long made it a practice to indoctrinate employees on how to contend safely with emergencies they might encounter on the job. Electricity can be as dangerous as it is essential to a modern nation, and that's equally true of steam, gasoline, gases under high pressure, even fire itself. We could hardly live without these things, so we learn how to live with them. This lesson involves the removal of a victim from a live wire without his rescuers themselves being electrocuted. A necktie and a belt from which the buckle has been cut off permit the man to be moved without any electrical contact. Employee safety is a major goal of any management team, one achieved through safe working procedures, education, and protective devices of all kinds. Coupled epidemics as part of extensive employee health programs that actually help protect the health of the community at large. More than 3 times as much money is being spent annually per employee on health and safety services as was spent for the same services in 1940. Other companies arrange for participation at the plant in the Red Cross Blood Bank, a strong community bulwark against disaster. During any kind of catastrophe, blood and plasma are among the most urgently needed items. Many firms, especially those settling in suburban or rural areas, are doing a great deal to control disease by systematically combating the insect menace. And while we're on the subject of dusting and spraying, companies that sell potentially dangerous products, like the insecticides being applied to these orange trees in Florida, go to great lengths to make sure their customers use the products properly so as not to endanger either themselves or the public. Here, a scientific check is made on the amount of insecticide trailing after the driver. All across the land, fortunes have been spent on equipment that clears smokestack exhaust of fly ash and other unpleasant byproducts. At this Pennsylvania steel mill, flue dust is precipitated in water. And here is demonstrated another common industrial practice. Before the water is returned to public streams, it is actually made purer than when it was taken out. In the air we breathe, the water we drink, the products we buy, industry goes beyond the requirements of law in protecting public health and safety. And now as we move into the atomic age, with nuclear energy about to take its place as a source of commercial power, industry again puts protection of employees and the public at the top of its list of musts. Here in Hanford, Washington, for miles around an atomic products operation, close surveillance is kept on the radioactivity of everything that might possibly be exposed to contamination. The air is checked constantly, as is the water in nearby streams, the soil and the grass, and the animals that eat the grass. Geiger counters measure the radiation and stand ready to flash the signal lights that will head off danger. Industry, a vital part of every community, continues to do everything possible to live up to its position of responsibility and to be truly a good neighbor.